All right. I thought it would be cool to, before we really dive into Bear McCreary as a composer, the way we got into him was through the series called C. And I just thought it would be nice to kind of go through a couple of little background on C and pull out a few tracks, even though... So one of the things that really helped me for the content on this episode was Bear puts out these vlogs on different scores that he's worked on and the instruments that he's used. And so that allowed me to really dig into a lot of this stuff. But he didn't have anything on C. And I don't know if that's just because it's current or what, but he didn't do any vlog entries, and probably just because he's so busy now. He doesn't have the time to do that kind of stuff anymore. I don't know. But so I couldn't go through. I know he's using some unconventional instruments and some different instrumentation like that. But I don't play enough of those instruments that I couldn't pick them out and just go, yeah, that's the oblong tuba, you know?
yeah. Oblong tuba.
That's the obtuse violin.
Love it.
But
love geometry.
He still had the same approach in that score, which is, I think, really what spoke to us. So what, for the listeners, what is this show about, C?
So it's an American science fiction drama. All right. The premise, okay, the distant future, so I guess kind of dystopian. The human race has lost the sense of sight, and society is left to find new ways to interact, build, hunt, and survive.
Yeah.
So
that's basically it, right?
Yeah. I probably shouldn't say much more, right? Because it's going to be spoiler material.
Yeah. And so
you want to know who stars in that?
Yeah.
Let's see.
We know the big one.
So Jason Momoa.
Yep.
Well, first of all, it's created by Stephen Knight.
Okay.
I'll get back to that in a moment. But Jason Momoa, Alfred Woodward.
That sounds about right.
Alfred Woodard.
Yeah.
Okay. Yadira Guevara Prip.
For a while, I think people saw Jason Momoa and put him in a box. And I really think he's done a good job of trying to stretch out of that a little bit and say, I can actually act. I can do some things.
He's got a very quiet intensity about him. And I feel like that's really valuable in a lot of different stories, Anyway.
Well, and if you think about it, he's Hawaiian, I believe.
Yeah.
Momoa.
Is he?
I think so. And so, quiet intensity, I feel like, is very much how...
he's mischievous, too. He looks mischievous, his face.
Yeah.
Like when he's actually,
out
of... when he's being himself.
Yeah. I know. He always kind of has a mischievous smirk. Schmirk.
Yeah, let's see. Honolulu, Hawaii is where he was born.
Yeah.
Joseph Jason Namakeha Momoa. Wow, what a name.
I know. But
I probably didn't pronounce that right.
Well, but whenever I think about...
he's your age.
I'm not sure how to feel about that. Because I don't look like him. This is what you could look like. You can still look like that at your age.
You're not Hawaiian.
That is the only difference between me and Jason Momoa. I wish people would finally see that. So back to C. So they, all of them except for a couple of kids in there are blind. And so he plays kind of the older, almost chief of their tribe.
He is. He is the chieftain of the...
Baba Voss.
Yeah, Baba Voss.
Oh, the chieftain, is that what they said?
The chieftain of the Alkeni tribe.
Yeah, that's right. So if you picture this, if you haven't seen this, so this was on Apple TV Plus, and really it's... Some of those reviews I've seen weren't as kind as I feel like they should have been. They were harsh on it for some reason. And I actually really think we really... highly enjoyed the show.
Oh man.
In fact, when you said that quiet intensity,
that's what the whole show is.
Tense. That was the one word that I came out of that feeling. The whole time you're on the edge of your seat.
Suspenseful, very much so.
Well, and they did a good job of, and I think a lot of that was from Bear, creating the soundscape under it.
Absolutely.
But they did a good job of mimicking or mirroring, I should say, the idea of being blind and what that would be like to live in a world. And when we get to a couple of tracks here in a minute, you can almost hear that, where it's like kind of subtle, understated music, but then with these really super warm and hot mics on individual string instruments, like where you could almost hear the horsehair. I mean, it's really vibrant, like it would be if you were blind, you know, and you're used to hearing things at that level.
Yeah, having that heightened sense of hearing because of the blindness. He did a really good job of giving it a really like crisp, you know, feel to it. In the times that needed to be like really quiet, they were like super intensely quiet. Just like it would feel like if you couldn't see what was going on around you, you know, you would hear what's not going on around you.
What I thought was really funny. So when I was coming up writing some notes for this, the day that I was doing it, and I was researching echolocation, because some blind people can use that.
Yep, I just watched an episode on Blacklist with a guy who was blind, and that's
awesome.
He made these clicking sounds.
That's what they do. And they
Something
listen
like
for the sound waves to bounce off of something back to them, and they can calculate how far away that thing is, what kind of shape it is.
That's really interesting.
Yes, all these things.
Automatic, like in their brain,
no,
just naturally?
They have to teach themselves. It's very hard. It's very hard.
Interesting.
Yeah, but you know, we see this in nature. Animals do this, and so I was researching that, and I almost put a bunch of stuff in here about it and kind of scaled it back. But what I thought was funny is that day that I was doing all that and researching it, then that night we've been watching Just Shoot Me on Hulu. We're going through a rewatch of that. It's been great. So the episode that we start that night, we click it on. It's season 6, episode 15, called Blind Ambition.
Yeah,
it's got Dave Foley from Kids in the Hall and News Radio. He's actually a big-time UFO advocate now. Like, he's really into that kind of stuff and outspoken. I've seen him on Joe Rogan's podcast a few times discussing that. So he's on it, right? And I'd also been looking up information on Cloverfield, 10 Cloverfield Lane and Cloverfield Paradox, so this thing with alien elements into it. So you have the UFO thing, but then also in that episode, he's talking to somebody when they go to the movies, and he's having them talk to him to tell him different things about what's going on in the scene. And this dude behind him was like, "Man, you know," he's like, "Can you shut the hell up?" And he's like,
"Oh yeah."
He said, "No." They said,
"Please stop talking." I am not talking. I am seeing with my mouth.
That's funny.
I just thought that was so awesome. The same day that
awesome.
We were looking up notes for this. But now that we've finished the series, what is your overall feeling on the score for that one?
It was, interestingly, kind of enlightening in terms of a blind perspective. Almost physically, really, the way that it affected me, you know, not just emotionally.
Yeah.
I find that to be interesting because I feel like the hotness of the unique and individual instruments that he chose, that Bear chose, really contributed to setting that vibrational, not expectation really, but just what vibrational level he wanted the viewers to feel.
Yeah.
You know?
Well,
it's like feel because you're experiencing what blind
the characters
people
are.
Yeah, exactly.
Which they're blind and they're having to live in this world.
But you're feeling it through the music.
Yep. Like I said, tense was the biggest thing that came out of it with me, which you can only imagine how tense that would be because there's people and there's warring tribes
constant
and all
threats.
These things. Yeah, exactly.
Of all kinds, animals and just any unknown. It's all unknown.
Right.
You know,
and
the landscape.
So when we first looked that up and said, "Oh, Bear McCreary," I don't know that person at all. And then when I looked up what he had done, it was so funny because I was stuck on that tense feeling, and the first thing I saw that he had done was the God of War score, the game for PS4.
Well, 2 at one
originally,
time, 3 and 4.
Yeah. And I've got some selections from there too, but and we had been playing that very recently to watching C, and the thing that I remember about playing it was that too. Like, it's so tense, and it's got some beautiful parts, but overall you're like
quiet,
ready for something to jump out at any point in time. And that's kind of what it,
that sense of impending action,
possible doom?
Or exactly, possible doom, potential doom.
So, and I, like we said, I think that played a big part of it, the score. But there are some kind of, I was going to say mathematical reasons, but I feel like there's grounded logic in so many of the things that we do or we like or whatever. And at the moment, we're just like, yeah, this is cool. I like it. But there's reasons for that. And, like us playing that game and then resonating with the score, not knowing it was the same person.
Yeah.
You listeners out there, if you've never done that, next time look up some scores.
It's like the best thing ever.
It's so fun when it really lines up like a movie to where it really is going right with what you're doing.
Yep.
Man, it just immediately tugs on your heartstrings, and it goes back to the beginning of time
really does.
immemorial. But you kind of hear the low note under it. So oftentimes when people play the duduk or create something with it, that's called a drone, when you have this kind of constant note that becomes a harmony to the melody, but it just stays the same, and you kind of build around it, right? You play on top of it, and we'll see as we go through some of these tracks for Bear that I see why I was drawn to his stuff after listening to stuff like this. Yeah, because he uses a lot of instrumentation with those drones that have a note underneath it that are just kind of constant.
Yeah.
Oh man,
I love it. It's like a bass line, it's a bass line of emotion almost. That low tone, that steady tone.
Right.
It's almost like I imagine walking across the, ground or whatever. And then the other notes, all the other stuff is the scenery around you.
Right. Yeah, but you have that foundation to build off of.
Yeah.
So I've been listening to stuff like that. He's got several albums, but while I read and then we saw C, and I didn't realize it at the time until I started reading about Bear and his use of the duduk, and how much it really played a part. But so let's go ahead and move into a couple of tracks here from C that as we go through these different pieces from series and movies that he's done, we'll talk about some of the unconventional instruments that he's used and look those up and kind of learn a little bit about it. But in this one, I did not have necessarily those to pick out, but I just wanted to play a couple of pieces to show how it kind of roped us in and pulled us through. So you mentioned the Alkene people, which the Jason Momoa character was part of. Yeah. So let's take a listen here. This is actually called the Alkene people.
Oh, the name of the song is the track? Interesting. Yeah. Fun.
Again, you got that low kind of just drone.
Super simple.
That one sound, what his mentor said, that one sound to start it with, that high pitch kind of, that's how the series starts. When we play the first episode, you hear that, and immediately it just kind of piques your curiosity. What? And it's almost like if a blind person was starting, you know how it is whenever you have your eyes closed for a long time and then you open them up, and it's so bright if you go by light.
Yep.
That's how that note kind of is to me.
Bright to your ears.
Kind of mimics that same feeling. All right, so check this out.
Is that cellos?
See how you can almost hear, you can just hear it
Remember
so
that
cleanly.
Westworld? It reminds me a little bit of the Westworld soundscape a little bit.
I can see that.
You know, it's that same kind of open, curious, suspenseful feeling.
The great
open, the vastness.
Vastness, yeah.
Vastness.
Which again, if you're blind, that's how almost you would see the world. And I can imagine, I don't know, but because you don't know what's out there.
Yeah.
And it's almost kind of mimicking that idea of echolocation, because you can hear the reverb and the delay off
reverb.
of it, like it's going out, and he's not filling it up.
And not all of the instruments are like that. Like some of them are pretty flat.
Yeah.
You know, not compressed necessarily, but just flat, like no reverb.
Right.
And then the higher notes have more reverb, almost like an echo location.
Yeah, totally. The ending here, I think it's interesting because he likes to really play around in the key of C. And throughout these tracks, we'll hear he goes back to this C, D, E flat kind of movement a little bit. And so you'll hear at the end of this track him doing that.
Mm-hmm.
So that's C.
Yeah.
That he's hammering on. And it'll come in C, E flat, D.
You can pick that out in your head.
And then the low notes, now the low is up at the E flat.
Yeah.
Going D, E flat, then back to E flat, and then back to D. It just keeps kind of hovering around that. Just, what, are you going to go back down to the C? Like, I need some resolution. I don't know what's going to happen. No, I mean, I don't know. When I first heard it, I didn't go, that's C. So I sat down on the piano and figured it out. But once I know that, then I can kind of tell where it's going.
Yeah.
But he does that in a lot of these tracks. I find that really fascinating. You guys can see how it kind of got us on this track of that same type of feeling. As we move through here, we'll see how that kind of plays out. But once I started to see the passion that he had, and then the instrumentation, like with the duduk, to me it was like thought about it, I'm in.
Yeah.
Like, all right,
for sure.
Let's do this.
Yep.
So are you ready to dive into who this guy is?
Captivating. Yeah.
Let's do it. Mr. Bear McCreary.